Okay, chapter 18, A Pride of Lions. A figure stepped out of the shadows. Gram put her hand to her heart. Fabiola instinctively pulled me close to her. "Who's there?" demanded Graciela. It is me, Santiago." "Gracias a Dios," said Flora, making the sign of the cross and hurrying into the house to turn on the porch light, which flooded the yard. Gram and Fabiola reached Santiago first. Gram grabbed both of his hands and said, "Santiago, we've been looking for you." He hung his head and said something that I couldn't hear, and Gram shook her head and said, No, don't say that. We're just happy we found you." Then she hugged him. I froze. I might as well have been back on the playground with a bunch of kids calling Owen names and me watching it all like a movie. Was this really happening? Owen ran forward. Santiago put his hands on Owen's arms. I could hear bits and pieces of Owen's nonstop jabbering. "Looking and looking for you. It took a long time in Baby Beluga to Mexico and Barrio Hatlatlaco." Santiago touched Owen's head and stroked his hair. What did that feel like? Owen wouldn't stop talking. "And we came with Bernardo and Fabiola and Lulu. Ruben is my best friend. Firecrackers and candy. Naomi ran after you. Thought you were lost." When Owen said my name, Santiago looked up. His forehead wrinkled, and he ran a hand through his rumpled brown hair. He swallowed, and I saw the gulp right down his throat. He reached an arm toward me. Graciela took the bag from my hand and gently tried to push me forward. I wanted to go to him, but I felt as if I was knee-deep in wet cement. I opened my mouth to say something, anything, but only tears came out. Santiago scooped Owen up with one arm and walked to me. Then he knelt down on one knee, reached out, and pulled me into his arms. At first he rocked us back and forth like people do when they're just plain happy to see a friend, but then he became still and pulled us even closer. I knew he was crying by the way his chest was sputtering up and down, and by the sounds of his sniffling. I clung on tight to him, and he squeezed back over and over, his arms strong and protective. When I pressed my face into his shirt, I smelled sea salt and, was I dreaming? A whiff of soap. Mis niños, he said, burying his face in our hair. That means my kids. When we stood up, there wasn't a dry eye in heaven. Fabiola started talking in Spanish, introduced everyone. We all went inside, and even though it was late, we crowded around the kitchen table. "We look for you," said Ruben. "I did not arrive until tonight," explained Santiago, reaching over and ruffling Ruben's hair. "My car was not working and I had to take a bus. But the drivers are on strike, so I waited in the bus station for 3 days. I knew I would not arrive in time to carve in the festival. For that, I was very sad. I almost did not come, but something told me I must come." "It was all our positive thinking," I said quietly. "Yes, maybe," said Santiago, smiling. "I went straight to El Zócalo to hear the announcements, and when I heard Bernardo's name, I could not believe it. I went to find him, and then, when I saw Maria and Naomi and Owen, I wondered if it could be true. My children. I just wanted to think, to prepare, so I ran." "I chased you," I said. "I did not know. I took a taxi to the house of Teresa. She told me you came to see me and where you were staying. Then I could not stop thinking about you. I knew I had to come." Santiago seemed shy, but maybe that was because we had all seen him crying earlier, or maybe he was just quiet like me. I related the whole story of what happened and how we got here, with a little help from Graciela because Santiago's English wasn't what it used to be. I sat beside him as he listened and nodded with a sad, tired face. He reached down and stroked my hair. "Tell us what you have been doing," said Fabiola. Santiago shrugged his shoulders. "I have lived in Puerto Escondido for the last 7 years. I have a boat, and I take tourists out to catch fish. It is a small living, and the town it is becoming more popular now, especially to surfers. I don't make the big money like I made in the United States, but it is very cheap to live there. I have a little house, and when I am not working on the boat, I carve the animals. I bring them to Aunt Teresa, and she paints them. They are sold in some shops. I sometimes make more money from the carvings than from the fishing." He looked at me and Owen. A tiny smile showed on his face. "Do you want to know the name of my boat? It is the Soledad, after my children." "Soledad is a saint, right?" I said. "That is right. You were named for Nuestra Señora de la Soledad. But my boat was named for you." "Santiago, there are some things I'd like to talk to you about. Maybe tomorrow? We need some help," said Graham. He sat forward, leaning his elbows on his knees and resting his chin on his folding hands. Looking at me and then Owen, he said to Graham, "I have thought of nothing else for years." I looked around at everyone sitting in Flora's kitchen, and I felt as if I were in a movie, in a scene that was crystal clear in the middle and soft and blurry around the edges. I didn't want it to end. I only wanted to be right here, right now. I wanted to remember everything about this night. Graciela took Owen and Ruben to get ready for bed, and the late hours soon settled on everyone. Santiago stood up to leave. "Wait," I said, reaching for the bag on the table and bringing out the lion. I handed it to Santiago. "For you," the lion that she carved. Santiago looked at the lion, but a sadness overtook his face. He shook his head back and forth. "It is the first time that a León did not carve in the contest." Fabiola smiled. "But you are wrong. A León did carve in the contest. Naomi, she did this." Puzzled, Santiago looked at me, then at the lion. He examined it carefully, turning it around and touching the nicks and cuts. "It is fantastico." Even after I was in baby beluga and snug in my bed, I could still see the pride in my father's eyes when he had admired the lion. The occasional pop of a firecracker kept me awake to revel in my thoughts. I was in my own bed. Graham and Owen were here with me. Everything was the same. Well, almost everything. Ruben was sleeping inside baby beluga too. We were now in Mexico. I had found my father, and a waterfall of happiness had drowned my nagging worries, at least for now. First thing in the morning, I would make Fantastico #1 on my superb Spanish words list.